On December 18, 2023, COMAC's Pudong Assembly Center faced a reckoning. The C919, China's answer to Boeing and Airbus, had achieved domestic certification 15 months earlier, yet it barely flew commercially. State Council memos referenced on track scaling, but production told a different story. Delivery delays stretched for years. Certification from the European Union Aviation Safety Agency and from the Federal Aviation Administration remained stalled. Test aircraft sat grounded. Schedule overruns consumed billions. But the real failure was strategic, betting that domestic certification alone could build momentum before global validation arrived. Here is how the cascade unfolded, and why nobody could stop it once contradictions compounded. By May 2008, Shanghai founded the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China. Jiang Qingwei and Jin Zhuanglong positioned the C919 as China's champion against the A320neo and the 737 MAX. The logic seemed flawless. Replace imports, develop a domestic aerospace industry, and offer type rating alignment with Western aircraft. The State Council passed resolutions that emphasized rapid domestic demand. With Airbus and Boeing facing slot scarcity, the opportunity seemed historic. The hidden flaw lived in details. Critical systems, including engines, avionics, and flight controls, came from Western suppliers. At the Shanghai launch, officials unveiled order projections as confidence symbols. The supply base was not local. By November 2010, the Zhuhai Air Show became COMAC's stage. Air China and China Eastern signed memoranda of understanding alongside sales chief Wu Guanghui. Launch customer commitments filled press releases. Airlines framed these as options, flexible instruments tied to political milestones. According to filings, these were not binding contracts but positioning tools. The order book grew impressively at every air show. Wall displays showed hundreds of commitments. What those displays did not show was that every paper order created hard deadlines tied to fleet replacements, route expansions, and lease expirations. Airlines structured capacity planning around COMAC's promised windows. If those windows slipped, network planning had to shift. Competitors stood ready. The order book became both an asset and a liability. Between 2012 and 2014, CAAC approved a roadmap, domestic certification first and global validation later. The strategy prioritized rapid domestic approval for commercial service, while EASA and FAA validation would follow. The business angle made sense. Domestic airlines represented the primary market. Early revenue could fund global certification. What seemed efficient planted long-term vulnerability. Global export viability, key to volume production and cost reduction, was postponed. Without EASA or FAA certification, sales to Western airlines and leasing companies remained theoretical. Meanwhile, Airbus ramped A320neo backlog to records. Boeing announced the 737 MAX. Narrow-body capacity tightened globally. By November 2015, COMAC rolled out the first C919. Chief Engineer Wu Guanghui stood before the aircraft alongside CFM international representatives. The press kit declared the program on schedule. Supplier bulletins told a different story. Parts maturity-gated flight envelope expansion. Integration required unexpected modifications. Supplier qualification revealed gaps. Each gap triggered reviews, documentation updates, and retesting. The public message was on schedule. Internal reviews showed mounting friction. Every month lost widened the gap, with Airbus delivering A320neos at increasing rates. Airlines began extending leases and hedging against delivery uncertainty. By May 2017, the C919 flew. Test pilots and CAAC observers began envelope expansion from Pudong. Progress appeared in milestones. The reality beneath that progress was slower than planned. Components required recertification when performance deviated. Avionics demanded software updates, triggering additional testing. Some systems needed hardware modifications discovered only during flight. Business pressure intensified. Airlines faced capacity gaps. Aircraft they expected were not arriving. Leases they planned to terminate required extensions. Route expansions paused. The promise-reality gap widened. Competitors offered alternatives. Airbus presented A320neos with near-term slots. Despite its own challenges, Boeing maintained 737 production. Airlines quietly extended leases, restructured plans, and kept C919 options open while securing backup capacity. Between 2018 and 2019, program updates maintained optimism. China Eastern participated in ceremonial milestones. Airline filings referenced delivery timing with increasing vagueness. Expected windows replaced specific dates. Progress continued publicly. Supplier bottlenecks remained private. Airlines discovered their capacity trap. Then in March 2019, the 737 MAX was grounded worldwide following 2 fatal crashes. The grounding removed hundreds of aircraft instantly. Airlines scrambled for narrow-body capacity. A320neo demand surged. Delivery slots became impossibly scarce. For COMAC, this should have been an opportunity, but the C919 was not ready. Domestic certification remained incomplete. International validation had not begun. The capacity crisis happened exactly when the C919 could not capitalize. Airlines needed narrow-body aircraft urgently, yet certification and export readiness remained distant. Type rating compatibility mattered. Airlines wanted seamless pilot transitions and minimal training costs. Cross-fleet economics, meaning the same parts, maintenance, and systems, reduced operational complexity. Residual value risk depended on global acceptance. An aircraft certified only in China carried higher uncertainty. Leasing companies factored that into financing. Airbus captured the opportunity. Boeing maintained orders despite the grounding. The C919 remained a domestic prospect. Between 2020 and 2021, the pandemic compounded challenges. Coordination between the Civil Aviation Administration of China and the European Union Aviation Safety Agency ran into travel restrictions. Bilateral validation, which required in-person inspections, witness testing, and documentation reviews, stretched indefinitely. Test flights needed international observers who could not travel. The business impact cascaded. Financing risk increased as delivery dates remained uncertain. Airlines deferred commitments. Domestic certification alone could not unlock international sales. Without validation from the European Union Aviation Safety Agency or from the Federal Aviation Administration, the export story stalled. Leasing companies hesitated. International airlines showed limited interest. Production planning suffered. Without export volume, unit costs stayed high. Economies of scale required hundreds of annual deliveries. COMAC, the Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, could not reach those levels. Its production rate remained constrained by certification limits and by the reality of limited demand. By September 2022, the Civil Aviation Administration of China awarded the type certificate. China Eastern prepared for commercial service. COMAC leadership framed this as vindication. Yet COMAC decided to prioritize domestic induction over global validation. The consequence was limited scale, high unit costs, and training and parts complexity without the production volume needed to offset those expenses. Airlines operating C919s required separate training, distinct spare parts inventories, and unique maintenance programs for just a small subset of their fleets. The business case depended on volume. A few dozen aircraft could not achieve the cost advantages that hundreds operating globally deliver. Competitors benefited from global scale. The C919 faced the opposite reality. Through 2023, Commercial Aircraft Corporation of China, known as COMAC, announced production ramp targets. Manufacturing executives outlined plans to increase delivery rates. The logistics reality, however, proved proved challenging. Parts qualification took longer than projected. Rate readiness required tight supplier synchronization. Engine deliveries from CFM competed for limited production slots. Inventory carrying costs mounted. Schedule slips compounded. The factory operated at partial capacity, and planned rates remained aspirational. Meanwhile, Airbus delivered A320neo aircraft at record rates. Airlines received A320neos instead of C919s. Boeing ramped 737 production. The opportunity window had closed before the C919 could scale. By late 2023, China Eastern operated the C919 domestically. Spares pools required additional investment because stocking parts for a small fleet meant higher inventory costs per aircraft, and training programs needed development as pilots and technicians required C919 specific programs. Reliability metrics showed the expected learning phase. For the C919, the challenge was scale. With limited aircraft in service, spreading fixed costs remained difficult. The A320neo showed comparative advantages. Established networks, mature supply chains, and global acceptance translated to lower operational costs. C919 residual values carried uncertainty. Without broad international acceptance, future demand remained unclear. Through 2024, procurement cycles highlighted the C919's position. Commitments remained concentrated among state-influenced carriers. Policy-driven orders provided a foundation. Commercial risk tolerance told a different story. Independent lessors hesitated. International carriers showed minimal interest. Export hesitation triggered financing premiums. Without market acceptance, lenders demanded higher rates, increasing ownership costs. Airlines compared total cost of ownership, including acquisition, financing, operating costs, and residual value. The C919 competed on price, but faced disadvantages elsewhere. Global certification remained incomplete. EASA and FAA validations stretched into uncertain future years. By 2024 and into 2025, production rate guidance remained modest compared to Airbus and Boeing. Fleet plans incorporated C919s selectively. The aircraft performed its core mission, domestic passenger transport. The consequences were clear. Slower scale meant lost time to market advantage. Competitors gained market share during critical years when narrow-body demand surged. The final image, delivery bays in Pudong, some occupied, some waiting. Factory positions were planned for higher rates but were not yet utilized. The vision remained, but the timeline had stretched far beyond initial projections.